Welcome to Caribbean Tea. From St. Vincent, Kendall Morgan, in Georgetown, Guyana, Dennis Chabral, and I am Vivian Williams in New York. In this episode, titled Adrianna, the Forensics of Justice, we turn our attention to the tragic and deeply disturbing death of 11-year-old Adrianna Younge, whose body was discovered at the Doubleday Hotel pool in Guyana. The case has triggered national outrage, raised serious questions about investigative procedures, and left a grieving family demanding answers. Today we take a closer look at the role of forensic science, what was done, what may have been overlooked, and how the handling of forensic evidence can either support or obstruct the pursuit of justice. Joining us is Dr. Dexter Todd, a respected criminal attorney and the legal representative of Adrianna's family. Dr. Todd brings critical insights into the legal process, the application of forensic principles, and the broader implications this case holds for justice and public trust in law enforcement. Stay with us as we unpack the facts, challenge the inconsistencies, and ask the tough questions that demand answers. This is Caribbean Tea. Let's begin.
And I'm Dennis Chabral, your co-host. Let's take you right back, Dr. Todd. Welcome you to this week's edition of the program. First of all, it's great having you. But also to go back to what happened on the 24th. The body was found almost one day after Adrianna Younge was reported missing at the Doubleday Hotel at Tushin, East Bank, Essequibo. Now, with all that transpired there, the police's inaccurate statement about the whereabouts of this young girl and the obvious tension that enveloped the area with people starting to burn tires, the whole reaction by the crowd, then the subsequent discovery of the body in the pool. What would you, as a former police officer, now criminal lawyer, expect of the law enforcement agency in protecting that entire area that's not only the pool but the hotel in light of the environment at that time?
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me on your program. Now, I would begin by saying a police force must always be in readiness. And when we talk about readiness, I am talking about you being prepared for for unfortunate incidents like these. Now, what we saw taking place is that there was a total collapse of protocols in relation to how the police ought to have handled an alleged crime scene. Now, it is clear, even where you have received a missing person report, and then you subsequently got the report that there is a body found in a pool, automatically you cannot rule out that you're dealing with a crime scene, an alleged crime scene, that is. And therefore, immediately you ought to have the correct persons on ground, meaning that you ought to have your crime scene investigators on the ground, someone taking charge. And this is always been, I believe, each and every police officer who has been trained in forensic would understand that there must be a clear protocol which one has to adopt. That being, there must be someone who is responsible for the ranks on the ground, who will be giving instructions. Now, clearly, you want to have someone or some team of policemen who would be responsible for cordoning off the complete area, not allowing persons to go out or allowing persons to come in. And it means, because you see, you are not sure whether the pool, the discovery of the body in the pool is where the crime scene started. And therefore, you have to be very careful in trying to ensure that the evidence is preserved. Therefore, you cannot have a situation where the alleged crime scene remains out of control. And that is what we saw clearly, that this alleged crime scene was not properly contained, and therefore you run the risk almost immediately of having serious contamination going forward.
In light of what transpired there, I personally was not to the ground, but I looked at the live videos from many sources, and I saw hundreds of people in the roadway. Then at one stage, people were actually trying to bolt through the door of the hotel. When the body was found, people were actually storming into the building. We had people at various levels of the hotel. In that kind of scenario, and with a bit of forward planning, for instance, from a layman's perspective, would you have asked the tactical services unit to come out to give you support?
Of course, to assist in forming part of the cordon of to ensure that persons do not infiltrate that cordon that you would have set up. It would have been important for you to call immediately for other manpower to control that. And I've always said one of the things also that is very, very important is to always have someone who can properly communicate with the public, and in this case with persons, and immediately alerting them of the importance of the preservation of the alleged crime scene. All right. And so I know at the time, it was quite chaotic. So maybe a lot of the protocols could not realistically be, play out. But at least we did not see the attempt in relation to that. And I believe that is where the problem is.
As the legal representative for the family, and based on what you have outlined there before, Dr. Todd, where do you think all of this now leaves the prospect for justice for the survivors, the family members of young Adrianna Younge?
I believe there is a lot, there is still great hope to unearth the truth in this matter, because I believe that the science, forensic science, it exists, and I believe the proper employing of this science will at least be able to assist in eliminating some of the other possibilities that would have likely to occur. You cannot reconstruct the alleged crime scene without someone who understands how this works, and you will need a crime scene trained investigator who understands the proper use of forensic science to reconstruct that scene, because it clearly needs to be reconstructed in order for there to be a clear mapping out of the likely possibilities of this alleged incident.
And what can we get out of the science, out of all of these tests that can help you to map out the circumstances that may have led to her demise through foul play?
Of course, it can, because you see, it's not only a situation of the where you can examine the corpse here to be able to determine whether certain things happen. You still have a situation where your crime scene may very well need to extend. I saw even on social media there is persons are pointing out a house which is in close proximity where there is a camera. All of that will assist in relation to the investigation. I'm talking about the issue of going back to have proper, if you're dealing with an issue of chlorine, which of course, our common knowledge can tell you can be one of the reasons or for certain discoloration. You'll have to be able to get that sample to be able to test that. So in terms of reconstructing, it is also important to understand, have an appreciation of maybe all that has gone wrong in terms of the infiltrating and contaminating of the crime scene, where persons were positioning, at the point in time, looking back at the photographs to see the last position where the deceased was. You may want to very well look back through your cameras to give certain places. And so that reconstructing helps you to have an understanding of the possibilities, what possibly could have happened. And reconstructing involves a lot of the photographs and having a pictorial view of how the layout was. And I believe there are a number of persons who are using that pool at the time with their children, and they have a number of photographs, which are available. Only today, I was able to get from the mother photographs where persons have sent her, and those photographs state the time, and they show the deceased in the pool, and they show the number of persons who are around the deceased. So I'm saying there is at least some things out there, photographs, etc., which will help an investigator to begin to put back the scene in terms of a sketch, put back the scene closely to the place that it was before the destruction.
Dr. Todd, I want to pick up on a few things you said, but before I get into that, my first question was, the term justice is very often used very loosely, and I know that you are pursuing justice for the family. What would justice look like if you're able to attain it? What are the essence of justice that you are seeking, the outcomes that you pursue?
I think clearly would be identifying the suspects, and of course, um, ensuring that the innocent is set free.
Let's, for a moment, talk about recreating the scene. And you made a very important point that photographs could help reconstruct what happened the moments before the girl was discovered missing, what happened in the moments subsequent. And you did refer to the fact that the family has received at least one or a few photographs from the public. Let's look at what has happened uh, from the day that the body was discovered to now. Has there been any really serious effort to seek the help of the public to do this reconstructing? To, for instance, have persons who were there in the initial period and subsequent to provide photographs of this nature in an organized way and in a manner that uh, whatever provided could be admissible evidence at any hearing if there is one. For instance, rather than a piecemeal approach, is there a website? Is there some special facility that has been set up whereby tips could be given and photographs or photographic evidence could be provided? I must point out that photographic evidence may also go beyond the actual day of the incident and subsequent. Uh, Other persons who might have used the pool in the past may have photographs that show whether or not the pool is clearly visible with the naked
Yes,
eye. So,
yes.
tell us about those efforts, if any, or if they have been implemented, and if they will be implemented in the coming days and weeks?
You see, uh, thank you for that question. You see, the challenge here is that there is a concern that the investigation is not being done in an organized fashion. Now, I want to be very careful how I am developing this. I do not for one moment promote that when a police investigator is investigating a matter, then every step of the investigation ought to be publicized. I believe my training as a policeman would have also been clear in the need to ensure that some things are very important to be kept away from the public. But that's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making when I say that there seems to be concern in relation to the organized manner in which this investigation is being conducted is that no one knows. And when I'm saying that, I'm saying let me bring it down to the family. The family in relating to this matter, they do not know who the investigators are. That and I believe that is important because they are very much unaware as to what the police force is doing in relation to this investigation. They had an opportunity, the police had an opportunity to disclose who are the persons who form part of the investigative team in this matter. And that again remained a private or secret um, information, private or secret information. But I'm saying it's not even explained that it's for the integrity of the investigation. It's for one's own good that that's not said to the public, and then we ask a justification. So
who really is heading this investigation? Who the investigators are in this investigation? No answer. What really are you investigating? Are you investigating? Have you ruled out homicide? Are you investigating homicide? No answer. Samples have been sent overseas for testing. What tests are you hoping to be conducted from those samples? No answer. When
sorry,
likely will those tests be available? No answer. Is there a preliminary report available of the autopsy which was done? That is not yet. When provided, it's not available. So we have no answers. Would you oppose us, of course, having a review of the autopsy? Well, we don't have the report, so no answer. So in a nutshell, the police force, all that they were prepared to see from the commissioner's level is that they are doing a comprehensive investigation.
I'm sorry about that. I was just queuing the clip up and it came in. But you were touching on that, and I had that queued up because I want us to talk about that a little. So the attitude of hesitance in disseminating information, as you
yes.
pointed out in that interview, is that a good thing or a bad thing in your view, given your police background and your background as a prominent attorney, criminal attorney in Guyana?
I would think it has to be examined from different angles. Firstly, I think an understanding, and that's part of my role as legal counsel in this matter, to explain to the family that there is not, in not every stage of the investigation, you are going to be informed, or you are going to be called upon to be a part of, because there are things within the police's control that they must do privately to maintain the integrity of the investigations. Now, I understand that, and I've done just that in explaining to them. But on the other hand, at least being able to identify to the family what really is the nature of the investigation and who is really heading the investigation, I think has never been a secret. I think in many of the cases in Guyana, we people know who the investigator is. And so that if they have information that they want to share, then they know exactly who to go to supply that. And I think that is where you are having the problem. Now, I would think if you look at the structure and organization of the force, because this matter occurred in Region 3, then really the closest station where they will have CID officers and the deputy divisional officer is going to be at the Lenora office or the Lenora station. So at some stage, you would have the involvement of the CID ranks there. I would think, and that has always been the practice, if you're dealing with certain crime types of offenses, this is being handled by the major crime unit. And the major crime unit is headed, I believe, by Senior Superintendent Caesar. So even if you're not calling names, then why didn't you just say, well, this matter is being investigated by the major crimes unit? And so that persons are aware that if you have information to share, etc., you know where to go. So that again in itself makes the entire communication between the family and the police force further decaying.
I want to simply press you on this a little. I know, and I do agree with you. I think in the context of how this case has engaged a nation within and beyond, that you would want to flex the rules of restricting information a little to be a bit more accommodating. And I do think that briefing on the persons involved and who are leading the investigation might be helpful. Yes. But I wonder, and I'd like to hear from you, whether this really is a big thing, not simply saying it, whether what you're interested in is a disclosure of the mechanism by which the public could contribute to the investigation. If you have something to say, here is the mechanism by which the information to be shared, not necessarily the identification of specific individuals. And therefore, as I ask, for instance, is there a site? Is there an email? Is there a specific database that has been set up? And how does that work? What would be the procedure? So the procedure, I think, is more important than the identity of who is behind it. And we'll talk about the FBI and how the FBI operates in these circumstances. But I think that as an attorney leading such a major case, given the way it has gripped the nation, given the way it has shown cracks, institutional cracks in the country, that a conversation and the guidance as to how this could be avoided in the future and how it could be corrected along the way to improve this investigation. So from my own contribution, I would say more details on the mechanism. And should be focused on. And I want to point out too that the FBI usually focus their communication on the nature of the incident, the role the FBI would play, broad statements about progress, and avoiding things like strategy and who might be the persons or suspects that they are
Yes.
actually pursuing, because it may tip people off and it
Right.
may interfere with the investigation itself. So,
Yes.
do you have any thoughts on that before we move on?
No, no, clearly I agree. And that's what I'm saying. Not every stage or um, progress of the investigation is made public. I understand that when you deal with certain sensitive issues, or you've reached a sensitive portion of the investigation, you may want to be very careful in how that information is communicated, and if there is a need for that information to be made public. I understand all those protocols which ought to be adopted in an investigations. So I agree with you. Um, this is a very important step in terms of the looking at how well they are organized. Is there a mechanism in place to receive information, etc., and how that information is going to be disseminated into the correct hands of the investigator is very important. But clearly that's not how organized they appear in this investigation.
How will those pictures assist you, Dr. Todd, in trying to unravel this case? Or how you hope that these pictures that have now surfaced will help the investigators, whether local or foreign, to unravel this case?
Well, it's important. It's important because I believe, as I have indicated to the family members who sent me that immediately this should be packaged in order to be handed to the investigators in the matter, because I know of the importance it will play in helping to reconstruct the scene.
I want to move on now to the investigation itself and what is happening there. But let's listen to the president, and then let's talk about that. So
Sure.
here is the President Ali talking about um, the government's commitment to a proper investigation. Let's listen and then let's talk.
It is very clear to me as president that this entire the events surrounding this entire sad situation is definitely a point of examination and re-examination of a number of things. First of all, and I intend to bring in international and regional help to look at our existing laws, regulations, and SOPs in relation to policing work, in relation to laws governing missing persons. And when I say laws, I'm not only speaking about laws covering the police and police operation, SOPs covering the police and police operation, or only relating this to the police. We also have to look at laws, SOPs, rules, regulations covering public places.
So far, is the president honoring this commitment satisfactorily, or has he left much to be desired?
Well, clearly, if it's not, we have not seen much publications on those promises, or those things that the president said that they were going to charge an international team with, in relation to, or a body in relation to reviewing. But let us not preempt. Let me not preempt or speculate whether that had started. But all I would say is that that has not been publicized.
Let's talk about forensics. Now, you have been described as someone who has special expertise in in this area. It is not something that is common in Guyana and the Caribbean. Walk us through so that the public would understand, and even for the institutions listening and our viewers and listeners in the Caribbean, the role forensics could play, not only to bring some level of comfort to the family, but to help to restore trust and confidence in the police, and also to take us to the ends of justice. That is to ensure that not only someone is held accountable, but the right person is held accountable.
You have said it. And the critical role forensic plays in a criminal investigation, I think, has been promulgated so many times, and it has not changed. Forensic science plays a critical role in reconstructing events. It plays a critical role in identifying suspects. And of course, it plays a critical role in exonerating an innocent person or innocent people. So, in a nutshell, that's how important forensic science is in relation to criminal investigations. Now, we have developed over many years, and I think I can't overemphasize this, that we have been playing in Guyana heavy reliance on what we would term as IC witnesses, in which we depend on in court for persons to come and say, "Well, I saw, and this is what happened." Over the years, not only in Guyana but throughout the Commonwealth Caribbean, we have been, and if we follow cases, we have been seeing that many of the courts have been moving away from this confession statements or paying every reliance, especially if an attorney is to successfully discredit a witness. Then you can't really hold the case mainly or primarily on IC witnesses. And therefore, there has been a call over the years for there to be an increased use of forensic science, of forensic evidence being coming before the court. And this leads us to calling in a number of forensic experts to deal with the specific matter. Now, I think immediately what the police force ought to have recognized is that this entire investigation started in chaos. There was burning, the burning and destruction of an alleged scene. And therefore, if they try to use their own what you call outdated method in investigating this crime, justice will be a very far cry. Now, let me expand on that. When I talk about the use of their old method, the use of just looking to see by using surveillance cameras, CCTV cameras, to try to identify likely persons who would have been in close proximity, waiting on information to suggest circumstantially, well, of course, the place would have been burnt, waiting on the fire service to conclude whether it was arson or it was not arson. And even the fire service have to employ or should be employing a measure of forensic science in relation to carrying out various chemical tests, etc., to determine what really took place.
I was about to ask you what aspects of forensic science would you want to see be applied in investigating this case and bringing it to a point where you can say, well, justice has been served, whether or not someone was culpable?
Well, clearly you have to get a properly trained crime scene investigator. That is what you need. A properly trained crime scene investigator. Now, of course, a forensic pathologist will be the right person to really help you in relation to examination on the body, various dissection and various tests. Whether you're talking about your toxicologist examination, or where you're talking about your diatom test. Now, your diatom test is very important because your diatom test is going to tell you whether the person died before entering the pool or the person died in the pool.
And how is that done? How is that done? Briefly, just explain for our public, members of the public, how is that test done?
That is a diatom test. That is a test which is done, and of course the expert is going to be able to carry out the various lab tests to be able to determine that. All right. Now that, to my mind, is the only test to be able to tell you whether the person entered that water and died, whether the person died before or whether the person died in that water.
I want to, at this point in time, continue along this line, and I want to play a clip with you talking about the scene and where you think there were lapses, and then come back and let's talk about it. I'm sure Dennis will also have some questions on that. So let's go.
How the investigators treated the report in the first place. Mm-hmm. We have gone past that, and we've gone to the stage now where you have found a body. Now that body ought to not have been removed by any person but a crime scene investigator. That entire scene, all the persons there, ought to be allowed not to move, not to remove anything, not to be touching of the body, not to touch the decomposed body, not to do anything. And then photographs ought to be taken immediately. There is absolutely no crime scene rank dressed for a crime scene on that scene. All the videos that you're seeing, there is absolutely no preservation. Now in the video you see persons are pelting at the building with chairs. All of that should not have happened because immediately there is a body. So you are looking at one of the crime scenes. Remember, we are not sure if that alone is the crime scene because the crime scene could have started somewhere else.
That's you on Nation Watch talking about that. And what you actually talked about there are ideal situations, ideal responses. But let's walk through what happened here and see whether or not the ideals that you talk about were possible. Was it really possible in the circumstances and in the heat of this moment for the police to keep the body until a forensic experts, until the necessary crime scene photographers appeared on the scene in light of the chaos that broke out instantly once the body was discovered? Could they have done that?
With the proper arrangements in place, I believe it could have been possible.
So would you agree?
Because the police, based on the information, it is the police who wrapped this body up in a and not even in a horse, not even in an EMT's ambulance, nothing at all, to wrap up and throw and put in a car and moved off.
So, but once the body was discovered and that alarm was raised, do you think there was sufficient a sufficient presence of the police force to be able to prevent the chaos that unfolded, the breaking and all that happened. We saw a fire. Don't know who set the fire, what happened with the fire. But with all of that, the ideal approach that you spoke about earlier, could that have obtained here? And if not, what might have been alternative approaches to at least preserve the sanctity to some extent of the crime scene?
I would say I would still maintain that it could have been proper arrangement could have been put in place. Now, this is not a crowd which added up. Persons keep adding to the alleged scene in seconds. You had surveillance going on, and persons gathered there even from the night. And so that if you had your what you call your intelligence officers on the ground monitoring the situation, you ought to have anticipated that the crowd can get out of control if something is to happen. That is how organized you have to be. So the system could have still been put in place to allow persons from not traversing completely the crime scene and from not destroying vital areas which could have been used for examination or for analysis.
And just to be clear, what you're talking about would be measures that should have been put in place since the afternoon or the night before, because it doesn't seem like the police would have had sufficient time to have backups and all that you're talking about. So
Yes.
so it would be the moments before the body was discovered, right?
Of course, of course.
And so the critical lapse, if we look at the timeline, would be what happened before the discovery of the body,
Yes.
how the actual report of the missing child was treated. Do you
Yes.
agree?
Yes, of course, of course. That all of that helped to exacerbate the situation
And so, for instance, the crowd that was building up should have at least been maintained at a
at a certain
distance
distance. Yes.
that would not have obstructed the police work after a body, if any, was discovered. Because we don't
Yes.
know that the police actually expected to discover a body and discover a body there. I want to move on to another aspect, which is the investigation itself. And we have to take it as it is. And notwithstanding the challenges, that doesn't mean that there cannot be a positive outcome. What happens next, that will show the real resolve of the nation and the efforts of people like yourself in order
Yes.
to get there. And so I want to focus our attention there. Forensic science requires an ecosystem that feeds into different levels and different layers. If we pin our hope on forensics in Guyana, is there the necessary ecosystem for that method to be successful in Guyana and other Caribbean countries that are paying keen attention to the failures here in Guyana?
Well, I would say, look, I'm a part of a forensic group out of the United Kingdom. And they have professional experts from around the world. And I think the message that has been the strong message that has been going out for quite some time is that networking is very important. And so what you want to have is a situation, and to have, I know the president talk about regulations, SOP, laws, etc. What you want to have is more an integrated approach, so that where your limitations are, it does not stop your efficient use of the science to be able to have proper investigations, criminal investigations done. So that I think that there is enough that we can do in terms of strengthening or police investigators, in terms of making proper training and facilities available. Look, we have a crime lab, a forensic lab, and the forensic lab has done quite a number of tests. But strangely so, the people in the lab, and these are people who I can tell you have various degrees, etc., but you don't ever find them working with the police on crime scenes. Sometimes, at least there is no photograph, because usually when we appear in these criminal matters and we look at the forensic photographer and what he's producing in court, we look for these things. We look to see who are the persons on the scene. And interestingly, these persons are not even made a part of the forensic team who are investigating this matter.
I'd like you to talk a little bit beyond Guyana to our audience throughout the Caribbean. How important is this forensic science and this methodology throughout the Caribbean? What governments and police departments throughout the region should be thinking? What specific steps, for instance, Guyana should begin to think about to ensure that we don't have another chaos like the one we're witnessing now?
Look, the science cannot lie at all. If the science is applied correctly, if persons who are trained, are able to take proper samples, there is of course proper tests being conducted, I believe we will have, it can work clearly as a deterrent. We're going to have could have a possible serious reduction of crimes, because persons recognize now that you have more than just an issue of alleged IC witnesses. You have technology, the science, which can be employed, which can, of course, make a guilty person convicted, and make, of course, a not guilty person exonerated. So I believe in the Caribbean, even as we move down the line in relation to criminal investigation, you cannot avoid the proper, efficient use of forensic science, because it is crucial in relation to linking a correct person to a crime. Because there are, and you see, the thing about forensic science is that the application of it is one that is not premised on local laws. It is premised on international regulations, in that if the test which is applied ethically is done in the United States, if that test is done in Guyana, the results is held to the same standard. If it's done in Canada, the results, the protocol, the methodology of how it's done, it is the same. So what you have is that forensic science is able to somehow unify a particular action or a particular conduct of a policeman, that he or she must know that they are held to international standards. And therefore, as I have said before, the science cannot lie. So that if one expert is able to prefer an opinion, having completed a test, then if the methodology used, applied, is of course correctly applied, then a second expert reviewing that entire process will likely to come out with the same conclusion.
I'm grateful for your time, but I want to explore now the remainder of the investigation and the process. The family, and I know you, one media agency has reported that you're insisting on that the government hires the FBI and other similar investigative agencies in Canada and the United Kingdom. Is this the position of the family?
This is the position of the family to have basically a body which is able to assist in the assist in overseeing this investigation. And I believe this is so because they believe that the police force at this stage has lost great credibility to be able to impartially and professionally investigate this matter.
I'd like to ask you a question directly. Legally, do you think that the government could actually retain the services of the FBI and these other agencies in the UK and Canada to investigate a crime in Guyana that is unrelated to the laws of those countries?
This is not a complete takeover. These should be trained or and experienced persons who are coming in to give assistance in terms of the investigation, and will be able to prefer at the conclusion a report which can also assist in how the case file is prepared. I don't think that anyone is advocating that they will come and push the police force out and take over the investigation and be the ones to investigate, to present the evidence, unless they are coming in and are prepared to be sworn under the laws, whether they be supernumerary or which are provisions. They have provisions for that, unless they are going to be done like that. But I don't think, if you look at how the RSS, the Regional Security Group, how they have been assisting in investigation, the Linden murders, etc., you'll find that they come, they're given a charge, they're given a mandate, they're given a clear line of objectives in relation to their investigation, and they're able to supervise the investigation. Now, the Office of Professional Responsibility, the OPR, is headed by a retired judge. He's not a policeman, but yet still he has responsibility by law to oversee an investigation now, and to make certain recommendations to the police investigators. I had seen the RSS on the ground, and there has never been, for the time that I've seen them on the ground, that they have completely removed the police and they were doing the investigations themselves. They have always been accompanied by the police investigator. So it is an issue of oversight, giving proper oversight to the investigations.
Dr. Todd, I put this to you for consideration, that the FBI and these other agencies are legally and significantly different and distinct from the RSS. The FBI is a creature of statute, and the statute gives it power only and jurisdiction only to investigate crimes against the United States, and particularly within the United States. And that the FBI, as a creature of statute, does not have jurisdiction and authority to investigate crimes within or beyond the United States that are not crimes against the laws of the United States. So if the FBI were to be retained by a foreign government entity, agency, or whatever, it would be acting outside of its statutory authority. And I'm wondering whether or not you would have to have congressional approval to authorize and create special authority for the FBI. It is known that the FBI does do work sometimes beyond the borders of the United States, but whenever it does so, it is a crime against the United States that is in violation of the laws of the United States. And even under those circumstances, the FBI involvement is limited. And that's why, and I know that every time that there is something in Guyana, particularly, I haven't heard this much in other Caribbean countries, people say we want the FBI or we want these others. Legally, the issue has never been raised. Could you actually do it? And I put to you that I don't think that they could. You may use the facility of the FBI through cooperation, for instance, testing of samples and that kind of thing. The other issue I want to put to you
but before you go off
ahead.
of that, Dr. Williams, I somehow would disagree with you in relation to how they can be used. I maintain that they can be used to help to supervise. Supervision does not mean that they're actually doing the investigation. But I think what has been done, and I think this has been done any part of the world, where you draw on the experience and exposure of a body or individual persons to help to somehow bring up the level of integrity and, of course, respect for what was being done. But I don't believe any group intends or can intend under the law to come into Guyana and remove the police force completely from investigating.
That's a different issue, and that's not the issue I'm putting to you. Here's what I'm putting to you. What authority the person who authorizes the FBI to fly to Guyana to be involved in the United States would have to authorize a team of FBI agents to board a plane and leave the United States and fly to Guyana to investigate a crime or an alleged crime that has nothing to do with the US law or the United States. And if they do, and something were to happen, there was an incident, who would go to Congress to say under what authority they left the shores of the United States? That's a different issue from them actually taking over. Guyana may pass special subsidiary legislation to permit it. I'm looking at it from a domestic standpoint in the United States. It is a creature of statute. Someone has to authorize its involvement. And I'm asking who would be that person and what would be the legal authority to authorize it.
Well, clearly, a request for the FBI or from the Scotland Yard will have to be government to government. And I believe it's not an individual who can request the move of a because you have issues of the statute and the laws there in those countries. I don't think that is the case. I believe once the request is made from government to government, I believe the necessary regulations, the necessary permission, the necessary amendments will be made to allow them to facilitate. But I still see the capacity in which they will work in Guyana. But I believe their supervision does not need some form of amendment of the laws here in Guyana for them to supervise and to give opinion advice. We have provisions for experts to give their opinions in court right through. Our laws provide for that.
Yes, I just wanted to quickly ask you, Dr. Todd, how does this supervision erase or remove the concerns about confidence in the Guyana police force when it will not be the foreign agents who will be directly investigating, as is being called for in the public domain?
Well, clearly the persons, even if they're supervising, and as I've said, these groups have done this in the past, they give their report. They give their report based on their observations. And if their reports are clear as to what took place, what they observed the investigators here were doing, And if it's a case where has departed from what actually is the report of the police, then we have serious issues. I think clearly the issue of their supervision, whether the person comes, it's just like where the investigator who is coming, what he's doing. No one is going to bring an investigator here and not expect a report. Their report must touch on observations, what they saw, who were the persons, what they did. And I believe that is what brings the level of confidence that the investigation was thorough.
I want to close on this note. I want to show to you, Dr. Todd, that while there is a problem with confidence in the police force in Guyana, that foreign agencies are not without challenges in terms of their confidence. And this shows adults who believe that the FBI is doing a good job in the United States. And what we see from the graph is that confidence in the FBI took a significant dip within. So we see that the FBI faces confidence issues even in the United States, though it seems to have a high level of confidence in the in Guyana and in the Caribbean. I also want to look at this other graph, which shows public trust in the FBI. And what this shows is that significant drop between 2019 and 2021. So these are issues that we need to address. And here we see, with respect to confidence in the FBI, only 8% of people in the United States have strong confidence in the FBI. So there is confidence issues pertaining to the FBI in the United States, but it seems to have a high level of confidence in the Caribbean. I want to get a quick comment from you with respect to why this might be so and how you sort of navigate against that, so that you have, particularly given what Dennis has pointed out, if you're bringing them and they're working within the same police structure, that you have distrust, what is the confidence that the product that comes out would be one that ultimately we will be happy with?
You know, nothing is wrong. Nothing is wrong with the structure. What seems to be the problem is that the structure and the protocols, regulations, etc., are not being worked because there is the observations that there is too many compromising going on, and which is affecting the integrity of the structure. So nothing is wrong with the structure. Nothing is wrong with this Guyana police force. Nothing is wrong with it. It is the people who are sitting in various offices are not doing what they are supposed to do. I have always advocated nothing is wrong with the laws of Guyana, but we see that the laws of Guyana is being thwarted many times because of the fact of whoever it's relating to at the particular time and place. There's too many compromising situations going on. And so I would say that they're all over the world. Whether you talk to any person from any jurisdiction, they will have disadvantages in their services. The FBI, Scotland Yard, there may be a number of things that is not going right to citizens in that jurisdiction. But when you really examine it, you will come back to the fact of the individuals who have the problem, not the system.
Here is what, looking to the future, I would say that Guyana should use this particular incident to deliberately work to improve confidence in the police force and the various institutions of government. The country should reach confidence to the point where the nation should not continue to look in the future to outsiders having to come to address matters that we have institutions that should be able to address. We should get to the point where, for instance, law firms in Guyana could be appointed as an independent body, private body, to carry out an investigation of things that happen. And we see it in agencies and institutions in the United States where private law firms or lawyers are retained to conduct these kinds of investigations. What I would urge you as you move forward in this case is not simply to place all of your gaze beyond the shores of Guyana, but begin to think about how independent, competent people like yourself could form that core infrastructure by which the nation regains confidence, and the people could be confident that solutions could come from within. With that, I'll pass it over to you for final thoughts and optimism moving forward.
Dr. Williams, I do appreciate that recommendation and that comment. I believe I would support you on that 100%. It is something that I have thought about, and I have convinced myself that this really is the way to go. No one is coming in to solve our problems. We have to begin to equip our people, train our people well, get our people to that stage in which they can contribute to rectifying a lot of the problems that we are having here. And I believe it's an excellent point being raised there. The problem we have in Guyana, which undermines that type of system, is that we have been seeing for many years that persons are not being appointed based on competence and, of course, qualifications. What you have is a lot of what they call square pegs in round holes. And so the people, and not only that, you have a lot of persons who might be competent and qualified to perform certain tasks are not being able to perform their tasks because there is too many interferences at various levels. So going back to the recommendation you made, one will have to have a holistic approach to it, in which we not only be able to identify, but we must be able to exist and operate in a system where we allow and respect independent thinking, where we respect independent approaches to matters, and not being so quickly ready to politicize every gesture and every position, because we must look at the bigger picture, that it is about our people, it's about our services, it's about our country and its development, and it requires that we give persons who have the competence and opportunity to make certain recommendations and to take certain positions, which I think can all go good for the future of Guyana.
Thank you very much and good luck. Dr. Dexter Todd, our guest on Caribbean Tea this week. Thanks for joining.